This is kombucha, and it is perhaps the most loved and hated drink in the health world right now. Some people are obsessed with it and claim it is a probiotic-rich elixir, here to save the world, while others say it is nothing but expensive soda and full of hot air. Well, in this video, we're going to put kombucha under the microscope and discover what it is actually made from, what ingredients are inside, as well as how it can potentially benefit and harm you. As a registered dietitian, I'm of course going to only use quality studies and research, not anecdotal accounts or unreferenced opinions. So strap yourself in for some science. Let's go. So just before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's first look at what kombucha is. After all, the name kombucha sounds like a mysterious tonic Gwyneth Paltrow would probably bathe herself in and sell for $90 a glass. But here's the thing, kombucha's been around for over 2,000 years, and it is actually just sweetened tea that's been fermented. That's it. So you know exactly what this looks like. Here is the 5-step process to make kombucha. First, you brew some green or black tea. I brewed green tea. Then you add some table sugar, right here. Let it cool down, remove the tea bags and leaves. And then once it's at room temperature, you add in a SCOBY. Right here, floating around. And I'll explain in a minute, but you'll also need to add some of the kombucha from the previous batch. And now all you need to do is cover it with a breathable cloth and let it ferment away at room temperature for 1 to 2 weeks. Then you have kombucha. In other words, kombucha is a brewed drink and made in a similar way other fermented drinks like kefir or beer are made. I mentioned the word SCOBY just before, and it is really the star of the show. I cover what it is in great detail in our separate video on SCOBYs. So let's cut to that for a second. So a SCOBY is a collection of good bacteria and yeast that we use to ferment sweetened tea and turn it into kombucha. Basically, it works similar to how kefir grains work for kefir, which I talked about in the video above. Now the name SCOBY is actually just an acronym and stands for Symbiotic Culture of Bacteria and Yeast. You might also hear a SCOBY referred to as a kombucha culture, mother culture, or tea fungus, although that just does not sound appetizing. And here's the cool thing, when you place your SCOBY in a sweetened tea, your bacteria and yeast buddies will get to work and feed on the sugar to create beneficial probiotics, enzymes, and lots of helpful acid, like these. A lot, right? Best of all, these can help with everything from antioxidant support to balancing the bacteria in your large intestine. In other words, your humble little SCOBY, it's a bit like Harry Potter. It has these magical powers to transform simple sweetened tea into a fizzy, healthy carbonated beverage. Meaning armed with a SCOBY, you can make your own gut-nourishing kombucha at home for next to nothing. So there you go. Pretty cool, right? And if you want to learn more about using a SCOBY and taking care of it, you can watch that full video by clicking the link in the description below. There is so much misinformation out there on what is actually inside kombucha. Some people say it's filled with probiotic superheroes and that when you drink it, you're sending down an army of bacterial buddies to transform your gut health, while others say it's just fizzy tea with a tang. With so many conflicting stories, our research team and I decided to do some digging. And like with all of our videos, you can find our studies and references in the description below. Here's what we found. Most kombucha, whether made at home or bought in a store, will contain some probiotics. But how much and what type of probiotics you get varies greatly. So first up, let's talk about homemade kombucha. Studies have found a variety of microorganisms in homemade kombucha, including bacterial strains from these families, as well as yeast strains from these families, among others. So a lot of people are quick to claim that homemade kombucha is packed with probiotics. Unfortunately, it is not that clear-cut. For starters, not all of these strains of bacteria and yeast will meet the definition of a probiotic, meaning some may not confer a benefit to us humans. Secondly, the strains found in homemade kombucha can vary greatly depending on the SCOBY being used. And finally, the amount of CFUs of probiotics made through natural fermentation and thus found in homemade kombucha is unclear. In fact, it is a huge point of contention. Who knew the probiotic content of homemade kombucha could be so complicated? But if you're game to deep dive into the research with us and see exactly what we found, then check out our kombucha benefits video. Link is in the description below. Now, how do store-bought kombucha compare? Well, in fact, we tested and analyzed the top 10 brands for you, and the results were interesting. Some contain just a few 100 million CFUs of probiotics in a serving, while others had up to 8 billion CFUs. Just as importantly, these probiotic amounts were calculated at time of bottling. In terms of the types of probiotics found in commercial kombuchas, once again, we found a big variance across the brands. Some were able to pinpoint the strains found in their formula, while others went full Coca-Cola on us and simply said it was a proprietary secret. None of this sat well with us, so we decided to do a full investigation into the top brands, and if you want to see what we found out, you can watch our kombucha brands comparison video or download our comparison tool. Links are in the description below. So what other goodies are hiding in this glass of kombucha? Kombucha is well known to be home to lots of organic acids, such as these, and our research suggests they might have antimicrobial effects, meaning they can kill or stop the growth of bad bacteria, as well as being potentially helpful for liver protection and detoxification. Unsurprisingly, since kombucha is made from black or green tea, it also contains polyphenols, and these are exciting as they may act as antioxidants to protect the cells from damage and reduce the risk of disease, or possibly reduce inflammation, lower blood pressure, and stabilize blood sugar levels. What's interesting is that studies have observed that polyphenol levels are higher in kombucha than in original tea, meaning the fermentation process can promote polyphenol levels. The research team and I loved this finding, and so we did a little more digging for you to find out how much to get the most polyphenols in your kombucha. And the answer is to make it at home using green tea and let it ferment for approximately 2 weeks, as the researchers observed that the highest concentration of polyphenols are on the 14th day of brewing. Thanks to the tea and fermentation process, kombucha also contains helpful amino acids. My absolute favorite is L-theanine, which can have a calming effect. I'll talk more about this in a minute when we look at the caffeine component of kombucha. Finally, you can find vitamins and minerals in kombucha, which you can see on the screen now. Some come from the tea itself, others from the fermentation process, and the rest from any fruit or fruit juices added in after the initial fermentation. But before we get carried away thinking kombucha is some sort of liquid multivitamin, let's be clear here. These micronutrients are found in very small amounts. With alcohol, caffeine, and sugar present in most kombuchas, you could be mistaken for thinking this is more a health drink for Mel Gibson than us regular people. And with lawsuits filed against several popular brands in recent years for misleading claims about alcohol and sugar content, you might be worried kombucha is some sort of wolf in sheep's clothing. But how bad is it really? Well, here's what our research team found. First, there is some alcohol in kombucha. Homemade kombucha typically has around 1% alcohol, but it can have up to 3% depending on how long it's been brewed. Meanwhile, commercial kombucha by law must be under 0.5%. Of course, if you follow the news over the years, you would have seen many commercial kombucha brands were in fact caught selling above the 0.5% limit. But a lot has changed since then, thanks to the 2010 FDA investigation, the Whole Foods kombucha ban, and a kombucha trade organization being set up. Brands have woken up. Not only have they fine-tuned their recipes, but also fixed their manufacturing and distribution processes to ensure their products are below 0.5%. Now, what about caffeine? Well, there is some caffeine in kombucha, which is not surprising since it uses black or green tea as a starting liquid. But here's the really cool thing. The fermentation process reduces the amount of caffeine. So while an 8-ounce or 240 ml serving of black tea would typically have around 45 milligrams of caffeine in it, the same serving size of homemade kombucha made from that same tea will only roughly have 10 to 15 milligrams, or about a quarter as much caffeine. And for commercial kombuchas, they typically have 5 to 15 milligrams of caffeine, with some even offering decaf kombucha, which sit at around 1.5 milligrams. Either way you go, kombucha is a very low caffeinated drink. And thanks to the presence of L-theanine, a calming amino acid that smooths out caffeine's stimulatory effect, kombucha should be easily tolerated by most people. Okay, so what about sugar? If you made kombucha at home before, you know we need to put a lot of sugar in it to fuel the fermentation process. For example, if we're making a gallon or roughly 4 liters of sweetened tea, we might need to add 1 cup to 200 grams of sugar, meaning an 8-ounce or 240 ml serve of sweetened tea would have 3 teaspoons or 12.5 grams of sugar. So what's the deal here? Well, the good news is that the yeast in our SCOBY will eat much of the sugar over the course of 1 to 2 weeks. This is their fuel. From studies we've seen, typically a SCOBY will consume between 36 to 84% of the sugar during a 2-week brew cycle. In other words, our 8-ounce or 240 ml serve of kombucha would on average have just 1 teaspoon of sugar left in it. And of course, the longer we ferment, the less sugar it will have. But just note, the sugar content can rise if we decide to flavor it after the initial fermentation with fruit or fruit juices. Of course, some of this will also be eaten up by the yeast that remain in the kombucha. To put this all into perspective, a similar serving size of freshly squeezed orange juice would contain 6 teaspoons of sugar, or roughly 600% more than kombucha. Now, what about commercial kombucha? Well, this is also a controversial subject, as several big name brands have been caught understating their sugar content in recent years, while others have been found to include lots of added sugars or have been adding flavorings that might not agree with your gut. To see exactly how much sugar is in all the big brands, plus what other ingredients they flavored their kombucha with, check out our kombucha brands comparison video or tool. Both are in the description below. Finally, what about calories? Well, this all depends on the sugar content, which we just talked about. But to give you a rough idea, an 8-ounce serving or 240 milliliter serve of unflavored homemade kombucha with 1 teaspoon of residual sugar would just have 16 calories. With a similar serving of flavored commercial kombucha might have 25 to 40 calories. Not bad. So just to recap, kombucha does contain some alcohol, along with small amounts of caffeine and sugar. But given the levels are so low, they shouldn't be anything for a healthy individual to worry about. And hey, it sure beats drinking a normal alcoholic drink, strong coffee, or sugary soda. From Chinese emperors calling it the tea of immortality to celebrity doctors hailing it as the ultimate cure-all, kombucha must have some serious health benefits, right? Well, the answer is it's complicated. So much so that we actually recorded a separate video going through each potential benefit one by one to verify the truth behind it. And you can find the link to that below. So what does moderation look like? Well, per the CDC and FDA guidelines, 4 to 12 ounces a day, which is roughly 120 to 360 mils, is considered moderate and fine for all healthy individuals. Meanwhile, for those of you with IBS or experience some abdominal discomfort when drinking kombucha, limiting yourself to around 4 to 6 ounces a day or 120 to 180 mils is perfectly fine. So there you go. Kombucha is pretty interesting, right? Here we have a fermented tea drink that contains all kinds of potentially beneficial ingredients and not too much of the bad stuff. Of course, how good it is for us humans remains to be clearly shown. But hopefully in the coming years, human clinical trials will be funded and all the anecdotal reports of amazing health benefits confirmed. In the meantime, we can rest assured that for the healthy individual, properly prepared kombucha is safe to consume and works fantastic as a healthy alternative to drinking coffee, soda, or even alcoholic drinks like beer and wine. And that is enough for me to continue to enjoy my daily serving of kombucha. If that also sounds good to you, you can either buy or make it at home. If you want to buy it but don't know which brands are best, check out our free kombucha comparison tool, which analyzes the quality of the top selling kombucha brands, including their probiotic count, sugar content, and more. Link is in the description below. Importantly, we have no affiliations with any of the kombucha brands, so it is 100% independent and should save you some time. We have a question for you. What health benefits have you found from drinking kombucha? Leave a comment below. We're fascinated to hear what you've experienced. And if you enjoyed this video as part of our fermented food series, I'd love for you to join our Essential Stacks community by clicking the subscribe button below. We research the most important ways you can improve your digestive health so you can love your gut again. Bye for now.